Good evening and welcome back. I thought I'd do a part two to last week's video entitled The Carrick Fox Dilemma because I've been getting quite a few messages and calls from people saying how much they loved it and how much it sort of sheds light on the whole situation, and not too many people have been talking about it. But I thought, well, it's my duty as an art fanatic and person who appreciates the arts to talk about it and to raise these issues. So thank you again for watching, and thank you for all those lovely messages. And I have coming to possession of some more information, but before I introduce this new information, I thought I would do a quick recap of my video I posted last week, the Carrick Fox Dilemma. So in the last video, I looked into some of the reasons that were given by the NGA as to why they called the exhibition as such, and I think I was able to pull out a few bits of information that would challenge the decision of the National Gallery in their promotion of this particular artist. And one of the reasonings was the majority of the reviews and articles that were printed during Ethel's lifetime, the majority of them were actually referring to Ethel as Ethel Carrick, and I was able to show that that's not true. The fact that the majority was would actually refer to Ethel as Ethel Carrick Fox or Mrs. Phillips Fox predominantly. I was also able to show that the majority of Australian art history books, the ones that did mention Ethel, referred to her across the board as Ethel Carrick Fox, and even the Australian art history books from a female artist standpoint, they also, the majority of those, referred to Ethel as Ethel Carrick Fox. I was also able to analyse the exhibitions that Ethel participated in during her lifetime, both solo and joint exhibitions, and across the board there was pretty even split between exhibitions with Ethel Carrick being the title, but it wasn't just Ethel Carrick, it was Ethel Carrick, Mrs. Phillips Fox, but also exhibitions where she was referred to as Ethel Carrick Fox and Mrs. E. Phillips Fox. There were no exhibitions that were solely called Ethel Carrick. So that's a very important distinction. Also, the very important 1928 Paris show, which the NGA claimed was a big reason behind the choice of calling this exhibition Ethel Carrick. It was also called Ethel Carrick with Madame E. Phillips Fox in brackets, which they don't mention in their explanation. And that was in light of all of the paintings within this particular exhibition being signed Carrick Fox, which was a very strange situation. I also looked at the 1979 retrospective exhibition at the Geelong Art Gallery, which was called Ethel Carrick, Mrs. Phillips Fox in brackets. Important point being that the Fox name is still attached, which was a major inspiration behind the NGA's decision to call the current exhibition Ethel Carrick, when in fact inside the catalogue there were two essays. One was referring to Ethel by the curator as Ethel Carrick, and the other by a reputed historian and authorised family art historian from the Phillips Fox family, referred to Ethel as Carrick Fox. So it was an incredibly confusing exhibition, but also for the fact that the majority of the paintings within that exhibition were signed Carrick Fox. So this was another example of not overwhelming evidence that would justify the current NGA exhibition Ethel Carrick could be called as such. And then I was also able to introduce information such as her references to her obituaries, which were all referring to Ethel as Carrick Fox, Phillips Fox, or purely Fox. And that was all the legal documents, as well as in her will and her death certificate, and also her grave marker, all referring to Ethel with the Fox name attached. Also, the fact that her letters, from a personal standpoint, she always signed her personal letters as Ethel Phillips Fox. And also looking into the fact that most galleries haven't come to a uniform decision to refer to Ethel any particular way. So, but the fact that the majority of institutions that contributed artworks to this particular exhibition, that they refer to Ethel as Ethel Carrick Fox within their systems. And there was also something that I sort of skipped over in the first video, which was the fact that the NGA, the NGV, and the Art Gallery New South Wales all referred originally to Ethel as Carrick Fox within their systems for quite a long time before they changed for varying reasons. But the most important note of that particular bit of information was the fact that the only gallery, which was the NGV, to own artworks by Ethel within her lifetime, within their catalogues, referred to Ethel as Ethel Carrick Fox. And I guarantee that the reason why that Ethel is referred to as Carrick Fox within the catalogues of the NGV during her lifetime is because she had to authorise it, and she had to give them her blessing as to how she wanted her legacy to be remembered. The next big bit of evidence I was able to identify was the fact that Ethel's record-breaking painting, The Market, was actually misattributed to the wrong year, and it has been for decades. Through analysis of both the signature, but also comparative works and precedent studies, I was able to show that the Market was actually completed in 1910, not 1919. It also supports my theory that every single painting that Ethel completed after Emmanuel's death, she signed Carrick Fox. Even more incredibly, I was able to analyse 2 specific paintings that entered the National Gallery collection just prior to Ethel's death, and I was able to determine that on these 2 paintings, the signature had been manipulated in the same oil at the same time just prior to Ethel's death. And I believe that Ethel herself manipulated these signatures because she intended for these paintings and all of her paintings to be signed Ethel Carrick Fox, because it was her intention to be recognised as Ethel Carrick Fox for posterity. And at the Ethel Carrick exhibition at the NGA, I was also able to locate a number of other examples of Ethel's early paintings which had suspicious signatures that looked as if they had been signed after the fact. And this can be supported by looking at the listings of the paintings that were still in Ethel's possession when she passed away, including Watching the Fleet, Arabs Bargaining, and most shockingly, Beach Scene Dinard, which closely resembles Sur La Plage from 1911. It looks as if it's been signed after the fact in the same brown, yellow oil paint that resembles the 2 paintings in the NGV. And I believe this particular painting appeared as On the Sands, France, in the Lenajol estate sale from 1952. And interestingly enough, this is the exact painting that appears on the cover of the catalogue for the Ethel Carrick exhibition. Now, I could talk a lot more about this topic. However, I think it's best that I introduce the new information that I accessed this week. So I actually went and accessed the last will and testament of Mrs. Ethel Phillips Fox. Now, if any document's going to show exactly what her wishes were and respecting her wishes, it would be this document. So let's see if we can find anything. So Ethel's will is quite a large document, and it's very detailed and specific as to her wishes. We can see that she appointed the Union Trustee Company of Australia as the power of attorney, and within she had quite a long list of beneficiaries from the proceeds of her last will and testament. You can see a lot of family members and art galleries and clubs and trusts that she chose to leave some money to, or some possessions. There was a mix of clothing, paintings. She didn't have any property, but it was quite a substantial amount that she had in her possession when she passed. We can see here that she bequeathed several of her late husband's oil paintings to the trustees of the National Gallery of Melbourne in order to raise money to establish the Phillips Fox Scholarship to enable funding for prospective students or emerging talent. And it just shows that she was very invested in promoting Emmanuel's legacy well after death through a national institution such as the National Gallery of Victoria, which was very generous of her. So she was very much supportive of promoting her husband's work to the detriment of hers, which she chose instead to sell at auction. And interestingly enough, Ethel foresaw that she needed to have someone advising the Union Trustee Company as to her wishes for the legacy of her own work. And so she wrote in her will, "It is my wish that my trustee shall request the assistance of my friend Mrs. A.P. Clinton, hereafter mentioned in the sale of my own paintings." So, who is this mysterious Mrs. A.P. Clinton? So if we look at the list of beneficiaries for Ethel's will, we come across a lady by the name of Frances Malalieu Clinton, who is A.P. Clinton. And she's listed as a stranger, but she was anything but. So who is Frances Malalieu Clinton? She's not just anybody. She's this lady here, also known as Frances Payne or Frank Payne, who was one of the most successful commercial artists of the early 20th century. Now, I believe that Ethel has enlisted her dear friend Frances to advise the Union Trustee Company, not only because she is a fellow artist, but also she knew Ethel very well and her wishes very well. And I believe that Ethel had instructed Frances exactly how she wanted her legacy to be labelled. And so Frances set about organising 2 estate auctions through Leonard Joel in 1952, and also a second estate sale at Lawson's in 1953. And you can see here from the advertisement and from the catalogue, Ethel is referred to as the late E. Carrick Fox. And you can see that these works were all consigned under the name Carrick Fox. And that is Frances's choice under the direct instruction of Ethel. And as we can see, Frances organised a second sale of Ethel's estate paintings through Lawson's, and these works have all been consigned as Ethel Carrick Fox also. Now, Frances, like Ethel, was a married woman. However, she insisted upon being known as Frank Payne or Frances Payne. Now, if there was going to be anyone empathetic towards another female artist being known by their maiden name, it would be Frances. Now, it is clear that Ethel has instructed Frances to consign her artworks as Ethel Carrick Fox, because that is what she identified as and wanted for posterity. So, one last thing. Within Ethel's estate, there were several paintings which were left unsigned, so they needed to be authenticated, and Frances was the person to do it. Now, in order to authenticate these works, she enlisted the help of a very famous painter who lived up the street, Sir John William Ashton, or Will Ashton as he was known. He, during the 1950s, was one of the most famous painters in Australia, and I believe that Frank enlisted his help because it would add weight to the authentication of Ethel's works. And this is what the authentication reads on the back of these paintings. I was able to find 3 examples of these works, and they're all authenticated by Will Ashton and Frank Payne. Now, it's a bit of a blurry photo, but when you look at it closely, it is clear that these works have been named Ethel Carrick Fox by Will Ashton and Frank Payne, who were under Ethel's instruction in her will. So it just adds weight to the fact that Ethel wanted to be known as Carrick Fox and not Carrick. And these are a couple of unsigned works that also appeared in her estate sale, which were also authenticated by Will Ashton and Frank Payne, including Rainbow Bay, which is currently in the Ethel Carrick exhibition at the NGA. And if you turn it on its back, it will have the exact same authentication as Ethel Carrick Fox. Now, I've provided so much evidence across these 2 videos, and it's unquestionable what her wishes were, in contrast to what the NGA believes they are. Now, I'm definitely not introducing all this new information to be critical of the curators of this Ethel Carrick show, because they, as I've said many times before, they did such a phenomenal job putting this show together from multiple institutions and multiple sources, and under the banner of the very important Know My Name initiative. I believe they didn't find this information because I don't think they were looking for it, because it is counter to the goals of the Know My Name initiative. However, in this case, unfortunately, the Know My Name initiative goals do not align with the wishes of the artist herself, as proven with my evidence. However, I don't want to move this problem to the next curator the next time that Ethel has any sort of retrospective. It needs to be dealt with now, and she needs to be identified accordingly. Now, if we look at the goals of the Know My Name initiative, which were established in 2020, they're looking towards an egalitarian purpose in the spirit of inclusivity, heralds the beginning of a new and inclusive future, gender equity, and representation of women. Now, if we look at the Countess report, which is a national report which quantifies the inclusivity and gender equity of Australian female artists, within national institutions and regional institutions, we can see that this Know My Name initiative has more than succeeded in promoting women artists. In fact, I think it stretches inclusivity a little thin with 84%. However, I think that will even out over time. Hopefully it does, being a male myself. Now, one thing that I was concerned about, however, within this Know My Name initiative was a series of events that were hosted called Know My Name Wikipedia Editathon. And it was a series of events that encouraged members of the general public, without the stipulation of having previous experience in art history research or art history degrees or background, to come in and learn how to edit Wikipedia articles in order to promote female artists and add more information about female art to the lexicon. However, I believe that this can be quite counterproductive because, as we know, Wikipedia isn't the most reputable source of information on the internet, because it can be added and edited by people who don't have the experience or the education in the stuff that they're talking about. And this exact situation happened back in 2017 on this exact topic, when a random woman called Antoinette from California, who has specialties in new media and absolutely no background in Australian art or Australian women artists, chose to change the Wikipedia page for Ethel Carrick Fox to Ethel Carrick. And funnily enough, she used two reference books which refer to Ethel as Ethel Carrick Fox as her reference point, which is absolutely wild. You can't make this up. So this is just shows that allowing people without the expertise or without the adequate evidence and research, they can manipulate through services like Wikipedia, manipulate the information out there and change the narrative without justification. And so we are lucky that there are some reputable sites out there that do include reputable sources, including the Design and Art Australia Online, where Ethel is described as Ethel Carrick Fox, and the biography is actually taken from Heritage, from an article written by Ellen Howe in 1995, and this is unedited, so it's a direct reference to one of our major, if not our most major, publications towards women artists, which is verified and industry approved. Now, hopefully you've enjoyed this second video. It went a little bit longer than I'd hoped, but I think it was important to introduce all this extra information in order for you to make your opinion about how we should deal with deceased artists and their wishes, and sometimes they don't align to blanket themes such as the Know My Name initiative. Now, what is going to change? Well, I don't think much is going to change. They're not going to reprint this book, despite the fact that the painting that is highlighted is in fact misattributed to the wrong date, but also that this volume reads Ethel Carrick for posterity, unfortunately. But hopefully it's going to raise some more conversations and hopefully some action for institutions to get together and try and discuss how we uniformly decide upon artists' legacies if they're not here. And we should be consulting family members if they're alive as a priority. Anyway, take care, and until the next investigation happens, hopefully it's juicy, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Take care.